All right, holy crap. Emergency edition of Late Night Lombardi. I'm here packing for the flight to Cleveland tomorrow, and I have the Stanford Colorado game on in the background. So it's obviously Stanford against Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. I only turned it on because I had heard it was 29 nothing at halftime in favor of Colorado, and then it was 29-19 when I checked my phone. And I did not know what I was getting myself into. Long story short, Stanford ended up completing the comeback, winning in double overtime, beating Deion Sanders' Buffaloes 46-43. And I mean, it wasn't just the comeback, which was the largest in Stanford history. So that gets the Bay Area football weekend kicked off on a crazy note. I think it was like the third or fourth largest in Pac 12 history. It wasn't just the comeback, though. It was the fact that Stanford had a previously anonymous player, some receiver named ELIC Ayomanour. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I used to cover Stanford. Full disclaimer, I went to Stanford. I haven't been following that closely. I'm just dialed into the 49ers and the NFL now. And Stanford had been terrible up until this game, up until the second half of this game. And you should see some of the tweets in the first half of this game. Well, I saw the responses to Stanford's account posting the score. Anyway, this completely anonymous receiver named ELIC Ayomanour steps in, and I'm watching this game, and he had this like 98-yard touchdown in the third quarter to kickstart the comeback, and the long strides and everything, pretty big frame, like 6'2" or 6'3". I'm like, that looks like prime T.O. Owens. That looks like prime T.O. disguised in a Stanford uniform. He was just wrecking people. He finished with 13 catches for 295 yards. And then he had one against Travis Hunter, who is a celebrated player for Colorado, the DB, in the first overtime, that he kind of like reached and caught behind Hunter's helmet. It was one of the great circus catches that you'll ever see as part of his 12 catches for 295 yards. But this guy just couldn't be stopped on these slant patterns. He couldn't be stopped downfield. Really long strides, really physical. And the crazy thing is, 12 for 295. He didn't have a game before this where he had caught more than 4 passes. So I'm talking about that. But know his name right here. This guy's going to get drafted based on this game alone. He could do nothing for the rest of his college career, and somebody's going to take a flyer on him in the NFL just because of what they saw on tape in this game alone. That was absolutely insane. And hey, it's Bay Area football. We know the Stanford 49ers ties. You guys know I used to cover Stanford. You guys know all that history. I'm sitting here watching, and I was like, I'm not going to go live tonight. It's too late. It's Friday night. Nobody's going to care. And then that happens on national television to get the weekend started. Well, I have to. Back in the day, I worked for ESPN, and I covered Pac-12 football. And we had this hashtag. It was Pac-12 After Dark. I should have put it in hashtag form down at the bottom there. And Pac-12 After Dark was known for creating and hosting very surreal, wild finishes to games. Well, today was Friday the 13th. Still is on the West Coast. In Mountain Time, where this game was played, Stanford and Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, it's no longer Friday the 13th. It's now Saturday the 14th. But anyway, Pac-12 After Dark was known as, weird stuff is going on in the Pac-12. Wild finishes. As you know, the Pac-12 will no longer be the Pac-12 moving forward unless they find a bunch of new teams to fill up the Pac-12. It's more like the Pac-2, right? Stanford's going to the ACC. Colorado's leaving. Everybody except for 2 teams are leaving from the Pac-12 to the Pac-2. So what was once this really powerful conference, and also a conference that gave you all these eccentric, crazy late night finishes, Pac-12 After Dark. That's what we called it back when I was covering the conference for ESPN. That's going to be no more. That's going to be part of the past. A lot of people are really sad about it. Well, it happened to be Friday the 13th, and it was the final Pac-12 After Dark on Friday the 13th tonight in Colorado. And guess what happened? Stanford came from behind 29-0 to win 46-43 in double overtime with some of the craziest circus catches you'll ever see. Shocking win, considering the fact also the other sideline, obviously, Deion Sanders in Colorado. I know some of the luster there had been knocked off because they had lost a couple games in pretty ugly fashion. I know that they lost big time to Oregon. They lost, I think it was a it started ugly against USC, and then they came back but couldn't quite finish the comeback. So Colorado was 4-2. Now they're 4-3. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Stanford's trying to get going under their new coach, Troy Taylor, after David Shaw resigned, and I'm sure that this is going to help them. You need a win like this. When I covered Stanford back in 2007 is when I started. I was a freshman in 06. I'm Richard Sherman's age. So Sherman and I went to Stanford together. Stanford was 1-11 in 2006. And then they hired Jim Harbaugh in 2007. And the first game that I ever covered on the road, I was a student radio broadcaster for Stanford, was against USC. And Stanford was heading down to the Coliseum. Now, this just wasn't any USC. This was Pete Carroll USC. This was 2007. They were still in their heyday. USC would go on to win the Rose Bowl in 2007. They were the number 2 team in the country. Stanford's quarterback, he was a guy named T.C. Ostrander. He had a seizure the week of the game, so he obviously wasn't going to play. Stanford lost 41-3 at home to Arizona State the week before they were headed down to play USC. They were 41-point underdogs as they entered the Coliseum on October 6th, 2007. Jim Harbaugh was their coach. He had talked some smack to Pete Carroll in the offseason. He said something about USC's recruiting practices or something. You know how the Jim Harbaugh-Carroll rivalry was. Well, he got that kicked off by saying something about USC. Pete Carroll basically responded by saying, Jim Harbaugh needs to keep his mouth shut. And then Jim Harbaugh said, "We bow to no man. We bow to no program at Stanford University," referring to Pete Carroll and the USC Trojans, who were awesome at the time. Again, Pete Carroll, USC. So everybody just figured Stanford was heading down to USC. They're terrible. They just lost 41-3. They're coming off a 1-11 season. Their coach had been talking crap to Pete Carroll through the media. Everybody figured that USC was going to absolutely annihilate Stanford, absolutely stomp them. And so we show up at the Coliseum, this little student radio table. It was before they renovated the place, so they didn't have a booth for us. They put us on the roof of the Coliseum, and we start announcing the game on the student radio station. And USC's up at halftime, as you would expect. They've just got so much more talent than Stanford. There's 93,000 fans there. This is, again, the pinnacle of Trojan football there in the early 2000s. But then, their quarterback, his name was John David Booty at the time. He just started throwing interceptions, like multiple picks, including a pick 6 to a Stanford DB called Austin Yancey. Now, Richard Sherman is not playing cornerback yet. Richard Sherman was a sophomore. He was still playing wide receiver, so he didn't have the pick 6. But this guy, Austin Yancey, got a pick 6, and all of a sudden it's a 1-score game. And it's like pretty late in the third quarter, and everybody's like, wait, what the hell's going on? USC is a 41-point favorite, and Stanford is within a score here late in the third quarter. So we keep on watching. And Stanford, by the way, their quarterback, their starter, had that seizure over the course of the week. So they're starting a no-name sophomore. His name's Tavita Pritchard. Tavita, by the way, Samoan for David. Pretty cool. But Tavita Pritchard, skinny sophomore, playing his heart out, taking care of the football. Stanford's hanging in there to the point where it's 23-17 late in the game. And John David Booty, USC's quarterback, throws yet another interception, his 4th of the game. And Stanford has the ball with like 3 or 4 minutes left at the Coliseum. This place is stunned because they're down 6 and they're going to have a chance to win this. As 41-point underdogs. It had never happened before in college football history. You'd never seen somebody come from behind, so somebody overcome a 41-point deficit, much less come from behind to do it. But the 41-point deficit had never been overcome. And Pritchard starts leading the 49ers. I'm so used to talking about the Niners, but he starts leading Stanford down the field. And I mean, the Coliseum crowd trying to get into the game, trying to roar on 3rd and 4th downs defensively, but nothing is working. Like, this band of underdogs somehow, some way is straining for yardage. But it finally got to a point after a penalty, whatever happened. It was 4th down and 20. And Stanford's probably at the USC 30-yard line. Then down by 6, it's 4th and 20. There's like 50 seconds left. And everybody's like, okay, well, this is where this Cinderella story ends. The fairy tale is over, right? Tavita Pritchard, it's so loud in the Coliseum at this point, he doesn't even hear the play call come in from Jim Harbaugh from the sideline. So, and I don't think Stanford had a timeout, so he said, whatever, I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to drop back. I think I heard this. I'll throw it over the middle of the field. Hopefully it works. Screw it. And, they had just gotten into screw it mode. Richard Sherman was a receiver at the time from Compton. Richard Sherman was back home, really, because USC is down there in LA. So he was recruited by Pete Carroll, wanted him to play DB. Sherman said, no, I want to play wideout, went to Stanford. Sherman on 4th and 20 ran a route that probably crossed the sticks, the line to gain, by an inch. A little in-breaking route right over the middle of the field. Crossed the line to gain by an inch. Pritchard threw it blind, didn't know what the play call even was, and heaved it over there over the middle of the field. Sherman caught it, got crunched. It might have been Taylor Mays who hit him, the future 49ers draft pick. He was playing for USC in that game. And Sherman gets crunched. I mean, literally an inch, maybe just a centimeter past the line to gain. And Stanford stays alive, picks up the 4th down. Then they have 1st and goal, 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal. They don't get it, any of those plays. Finally, it hits 4th and goal. Stanford had Sherman as one of their wideouts. They had another receiver named Mark Bradford. Mark Bradford's was also from LA, and they were playing down at USC. Mark Bradford's dad had passed away the week of this game. They threw a fade from the sophomore no-name quarterback Tavita Pritchard to the senior wide receiver Mark Bradford, whose father had just passed away, and Bradford was playing back in his hometown, in his father's hometown of LA. They threw a fade on 4th in the ball game, attempting to notch the biggest upset in college football history. 41-point underdogs, down 23-17, and Mark Bradford hauled it in. Touchdown. Jim Harbaugh beat Pete Carroll 24-23. I saw the then USC athletic director, Mike Garrett, kicking a trash can outside of the Coliseum after the game. It was apocalyptic. I mean, again, this was the height of USC football, and they lost to a team over which they were favored by 41 points. And USC would still go on to win the Rose Bowl that year, but I think it was the beginning of the end, because Stanford would come back in there a couple years later. Sherman was playing cornerback by then. He had a pick six, and Andrew Luck was quarterback by then, and Stanford won 55-21. Jim Harbaugh was trying to hang 50 on those mother effers. That's what he actually said. He wanted to hang 50 on Pete Carroll, and he did. He went for 2 at 48, didn't get it. Got the ball back, around power down the entire field with Toby Gerhardt, Andrew Luck at quarterback, and hung 55 on USC. It caused Pete Carroll to say, "What's your deal?" to Jim Harbaugh. Then Jim goes, "I don't know, what's your deal?" at the post-game handshake. The legend has it, and not just legend, I've talked to people on these teams, and especially on the Stanford side. Stanford was running power under Jim Harbaugh's team so prolifically and so often that one of the USC defensive linemen in that was a 2009 game, literally said, while Stanford was running up the score, "If you guys run power one more time, I quit. I'm just going to get up. I'm going to stop playing." I guess they did quit because they gave up that many points. Anyway, that was the previous era of Stanford football. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there. Good stories. I covered a lot of big games back when I was a student, and then when I covered Stanford a little bit later on. And it all really culminated, I feel, when the Pac-12 essentially announced that it was going to dissolve. So the fact that we just watched what we did with this guy, ELIC Ayomanour, I mean, seriously looking like prime Terrell Owens. What was it? 13 catches, 295 yards. We can pour one out for Pac-12 After Dark. Friday the 13th, Pac-12 After Dark. And on Friday the 13th, this guy, ELIC Ayomanour, had 13 catches. And guess what? The 13th catch, the really wild circus catch behind Travis Hunter's helmet, came at exactly midnight to end Friday the 13th, Mountain Time, over there in Boulder, Colorado. Literally, it came at exactly midnight to end Friday the 13th. His 13th catch, the wildest of all. So sometimes sports give us like this crazy symmetry to the point where I just have to laugh and be like, I'm going live. I'm going to go talk about this right now because it's just too crazy to not talk about it. So anyway, let's light up the comment section. Let's check out what's talking about let's check out what people are talking about. Meanwhile, tomorrow I'm flying out to Cleveland, but I'm going to have a Brock Purdy film review for you. I'm really excited to do that. I know it's a little too late at night. 49ers fans probably not ready for a tape review. We're going to go Brock Purdy tape review tomorrow. We're going to go 49ers Browns prediction tomorrow. Bay Area football is off to a hell of a start this weekend with that Stanford 46-43 win over Colorado. Oh, thank you. I love it. People sending money after Stanford won may make me start watching Stanford a little bit more often again. But yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy. Yeah, Black Cats running all over Boulder, Colorado on Friday the 13th. Got a comment here saying exactly that. And the question is, should the 49ers draft ELIC Ayomanour? Yeah, we could start saying that. I think he's just a sophomore. I think he's a redshirt freshman because I don't think he played before this season. This guy is Canadian. He's from Canada. He's looking like Terrell Owens out there in big, long strides, 90-plus yard touchdowns, unguardable slant pattern, and then you try to jump the slant, and he'll run over the top and catch one over your helmet. 13 catches, 295 yards, never had more than 4 catches before this. I mean, sports give us crazy, crazy stories. So I'm just going through some of the comments here. I guess we have some 49ers questions. Is Randy Gregory expected to play on Sunday? Yes, sir. Kyle Shanahan is excited for Randy Gregory to play. So I was in the 49ers locker room today. I was also at George Washington High School just to check out part of that football game that they played with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. That was really cool. I hopped over to North Beach to take care of some business. I went up to the Dolphin Club. I then hung out at Off the Grid at Fort Mason, the biggest food truck festival in the Bay Area, and then up on a rooftop in the marina. So it was a good little San Francisco day. Tomorrow is the flight to Cleveland. Does Lombardi have a favorite Stanford football player? The only one I know right now is ELIC Ayomanour. They have Emmitt Smith's son. EJ Smith is on the team. They got a guy out of Bakersfield named Urosek is his last name, right? The tight end, Urosek. So Bakersfield, I gotta rep the Valley, the Central Valley. They got some talent on that team. I just think it's going to take a little while. The program wasn't in a great spot here the last couple of years, so I think it's going to take a while for Troy Taylor to get that going. But again, the reason I brought up the Stanford win over USC in 2007 is that's what jump-started the program. That's what jump-started Jim Harbaugh's coaching career at the high D1 level. Within a few years, Stanford would have all those BCS appearances racked up, and Jim Harbaugh was the coach of the San Francisco 49ers. So stuff can move quickly. Stanford seems to be kind of a feeder to the 49ers, right? It gave the 49ers Bill Walsh. Stanford gave the 49ers Jim Harbaugh. Both good coaches in 49ers history. Awesome. Visalia native. My favorite spot for food in Visalia. Mexican food, I like El Tarasco downtown. I love In-N-Out Burger. It's where we always hung out late at night in high school. Walnut and Mooney. They built a second In-N-Out Burger in Visalia. For sushi, Gozen. Gozen's really good. And I heard, Orange Works is really good down in Strathmore. They have one down in downtown Visalia now. I love Component Coffee for the breakfast burrito. Visalia's got a lot of good spots. So tell me what your favorite spot is in Visalia. Maybe we'll see you around town. How long is the flight? Tomorrow, I'm guessing, 4 hours? Maybe 4.5? Depends on the wind, right? I think we're going to have a tailwind. I would hope so, at least, flying east from San Francisco to Cleveland. Andrew Luck also boosted Jim Harbaugh, of course. I mean, but Jim Harbaugh recruited Andrew Luck, and you know what was big? Beating USC in 2007 as 41-point underdogs. I have to get that program going in the right direction to get the big time recruits. That's why tonight Stanford wins really big. You had Deion Sanders on the other side, a lot of national exposure that can help you in the recruiting game if you're Troy Taylor and Stanford. Pizza Factory. Love it. Somebody talking about the Central Valley. All right. Yeah, I can't be online too long. I just wanted to say hello to everybody. It's kind of cool that we have 252 people in here late on Friday the 13th talking about Stanford football. But Brock Purdy film review. Let's do it tomorrow morning. Why don't you all be ready for that? We'll do that Brock Purdy film review. Then I'll head off to the airport. Maybe get another piece of content up for you before I take off from SFO. Well, I have to get the prediction out as well. But maybe I do the prediction later at night from Cleveland. Decisions. I've got a lot to do tomorrow. SFO to Cleveland. A lot of content's going to be coming your way. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. I don't think anybody else is coming on an emergency live at 11:43 p.m. So I'll do it for you. Emergency live. Stanford beats Colorado 46-43. Let's have a weekend of Bay Area football. It just started really, really auspiciously. So I'm sure more is coming. Everybody take care as the 49ers try to move to 6-0.